Welcome to the Cyber Cognition Podcast, a show that seeks to understand the future and the increasingly complicated relationship between society and technology. Explore the worlds of cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, transhumanism, robotics, and other fascinating topics at the frontiers of science and discovery, with your hosts, Hutch and Len.
I think so. Again, we're going to talk about post AGI economics. I think it probably helps this set the stage here by first talking about what AGI is. I think if you tune in, you probably already have a pretty good idea. But of course, AGI is artificial general intelligence. It is this idea that we get to the point where artificial intelligence systems are at least as proficient as humans are at nearly all tasks. And so it was interesting. I was talking with somebody the other day, and they actually we were talking about the scaling race and the fact that we are seeing each of these big tech giants just dump tons of money into building bigger and bigger uh, neural network systems that are. And she asked me the question of why are we continuing to put all this money there? Why do they continue to dump more and more money and spending so much on this? And I mean, the truth is, it is because, I mean, even if you look at OpenAI's mission statement, it is they are attempting to achieve AGI for the benefit of humanity. And so we have to think about some of the foregone conclusions of if they do achieve their goal, which I mean, a lot of people believe that they're on the way, otherwise the money wouldn't be flowing in. If they do achieve their goal, what does that mean for the rest of the world? And really, only two things need to happen in order for our economy, the entire world as we know it, to completely transform. One, we have to reach AGI. We have to achieve a level of digital intelligence that is at least on par in all regards with human being capabilities. But then the other one is that we have to hit a point where it is economically viable to use that digital intelligence for what was traditionally done by human labor. So once machines are capable of doing everything that humans are, and it is cheaper to employ those machines than it is humans, the entire concept of an economy built around human labor completely dissolves. I think one of the other things that I think is fascinating here is just the question of, and I think it's an important preliminary conversation, is can we even arrive at AGI? And so there's a lot of constraints here, and there's a lot of obstacles that have to happen in order for us to continue scaling up the systems in the way that we have. Energy is a fascinating one that I think we've talked about in a few of the episodes that we've had here. The the truth is, in order to continue to scale up these systems, we're looking at all kinds of new alternative ways to generate energy. A lot of there's been concerns about rolling out a lot of these newer data centers because of the tax that they're going to have on the electric grids of the communities that they're being deployed in. And there's even been considerations by a lot of the technology firms to co-locate nuclear power plants and other alternative forms of energy right next to these data centers, just so that they have a dedicated and constant influx of electricity and power in order to be able to run these training runs and the massive amount of inference and compute that's needed in order to execute these systems. Another one, actually, interestingly enough, is water. So a lot of communities have tried to put on the brakes for some of these data centers because of the amount of water that's needed just to cool these systems is going to be taxing on the communities. Money is another question. So right now, we still see at least a decent amount of investor sentiment and throwing more and more money at these things. But we are already starting to see grumblings of investors that are wondering where the returns are and why we're still investing so much money if we're not seeing the financial returns related to those. And so it does kind of beg the question of, do we get to AGI first, or does the interest in investment dry up because we don't get immediate enough returns?
Well, personally, I want to attach the first question first, and I think the idea that are we going to get there? Yes, and the one thing that everything you said made absolutely great sense, but the one thing that you didn't include in that is, well, you did, but let me extrapolate. This is a race. And we can talk about the race between, say, OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google, or we could actually look at to the global scenario. It's not that; it's the U.S., it's China, it's everybody, Russia. Everybody out there is trying to get to this. I think we're one of the few that I think has the opportunity to potentially pull it off. But let's be honest, we've seen the government relocate people for putting in a road. You think when it comes to national security, they won't upend an entire community and go, guess what? You don't have to worry about, the data center moving in because you're moving out. So I think from just a national perspective, we have to get there eventually, but
I
the
think
idea, go ahead.
what I was going to say is you mentioned this being a race, and I think you're absolutely right. But I think it's also important to highlight that this is a race where the winner of that race really is winner takes all.
Oh, absolutely.
Once somebody achieves AGI, it's game over for everybody else.
I mean, I'm sure that we'll still continue to see people try and get there. I'm sure they'll do what they can to try and steal any code or any ideas they can from the victor. But right now, if you, in my opinion, everything when it comes to the AI is still pretty much early Linux days. Everybody's still jockeying for that industry dominance. And I mean, currently, I would have to say that my money's on OpenAI, but that's not going to stop everybody from trying to get to this landmark, because this is going to be the next major point. This is going to be essentially the same moment in time where the world first learned about LLMs and AI. This is going to just getting there is going to upend society.
And I think it's also going to be a launching point, because once we achieve systems that are at least as capable as human beings, we no longer have to have human beings even working on the problem of improving them. We can just have them work on improving themselves. And that's the whole typical problem that we've talked about, and really has been foreshadowed in science fiction for decades now, is that point in which machines get to a level of sophistication that they are able to improve on their own architecture, on their own design, able to make breakthroughs in the same way that humans would. Once that happens, you have a system that's feeding itself. The whoever wins, whoever gets there, can then step back and just work on scaling out and distributing that system. And I mean, all bets are off. At that point, it really does become a question of how long does it take for the technology to become economically viable enough to replace you and me and everybody else that has a job.
Yep. But here's where I think this is a good enough jumping off point to get into, what does it look like? I don't think we're actually ever going to be without jobs. I just think we're going to move into a digital existence. And as crazy as this sounds, you've seen Ready Player One, I'm sure.
Yep.
But I really do think that the future of humanity is going to be a virtual existence inside of a digital world. It's going to be the only place left where actually having some type of individuality or autonomy is going to have any real value. I mean, I see us, working in some type of a metaverse, and what's the difference? Would you want to talk to a human or would you want to talk to a bot?
Well, you know, tell the difference, right?
Well, but see, that's the thing. At that point, it becomes a commodity. Because there's nothing left unless you have some type of manual skill.
Yeah.
So the only place left to earn any type of money would be in the digital side of existence.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a couple of things here. I think that one of it is, fascinatingly enough, kind of just and of course this is your world, but the world of transhumanism, the idea that, and I think the person that immediately comes to mind for me that's spoken of this level of integration because of AI advancement is Elon Musk, who that's really, and I know you've pointed out many times he's certainly not the only player in the brain computer interface space, but that really has been how he's described his vision of, at least the long term vision of Neuralink, is that basically if we as humanity want to keep up with the rapidly advancing capabilities of artificial intelligence and remain relevant, then integration is almost becomes a matter of necessity.
Yeah, and to that, I question it. Being a transhuman, granted, I don't have a BCI, but I've even given thought to, what that would even look like, because I mean, everybody's seen enough science fiction to think that, oh, well, you're going to have your heads up display in your eyeball, you're just going to see it. Okay, well, in order for that to happen, you've got a couple of different options. You could either replace, your eyeball, you could try and tap into the optic nerve, but we're nowhere near all of that.
No.
So, to me, you also have to look at the idea of, in order to get to something like that, the amount of money that it would require to be able to do the brain surgery, go through the healing process. And to your point, if we don't have jobs, how do you have currency? How do you have something to give in order to get these skills?
So I think that that's the challenge, is if we do, let's say whatever company, let's say OpenAI does get to that point where they achieve AGI. And at that point, they have a solution that, and let's also assume the second premise, that we do get to a point where economically viable for them to use that to address many of the roles that humans currently fill in the operational workplace. We then have essentially a consolidation of wealth. Basically, all of the wealth that was previously generated by people in the workforce is going to shift to a single organization, which is the winner in this case, in this theoretical scenario, OpenAI. And so that does beg the question of, and I know that OpenAI's mission statement is create AGI for the benefit of all mankind, but we've also seen them shift significantly in terms of the way that they structure their organization, in the terms of the way that they view risk and safety. And so I have to wonder, are they really altruistic enough that if they end up in a situation where all of the world's wealth is increasingly being consolidated within their hands, I mean, what does that even look like? Do we have like a private company that then provides some kind of universal basic income? Does the government step in and regulate the wealth generation of that system that's now generating all of that? I mean, to say that it would radically transform everything about the way that the economy works, I mean, regardless of what level of socialism you mix into it, at the end of the day, we're still a capitalist society, and we're an economy that is built on labor and
Mm-hmm.
human
And
jobs.
if you remove that, there's nothing left. I mean, at this point, you'd have your influencers, but once again, if you don't have, I mean, all the way down to, and I'm not saying that anybody who's got a job is less than anybody else, but, waiters, valets, executives, it doesn't matter. If you don't have those jobs anymore, where does the money, at the top of the funnel come from?
Yeah. So yeah, it is an interesting discussion. I think that we've had a couple politicians that were a little bit ahead of their time. Again, not endorsing politics, but at least speaking to the idea. We've had like Andrew Yang, who basically ran on basically the premise of technology is going to continue to displace jobs over time, and was already thinking in the UBI space. Again, UBI is kind of universal basic income. It's this idea that in a post-labor economy, we essentially provide people allowances for being human, for just being able to live and experience their life, because enough value is being generated outside of the requirement of them even needing to work. Um, I, I think the challenge, what is going to be the challenge for most people, is how to draw that line of when we make that cutover and what that looks like. And I think for a lot of people been successful in their lives, it's probably going to be difficult to enter a world where now the efforts that they put towards things are no more relevant than the people that don't put that effort forth. So I think for a lot of people, this kind of transformation is going to be so unsettling. It's going to be extremely polarizing. It's going to be, um, I think that we are going to go through and this is, I still think that
I don't think we'll ever get there.
I think we probably will get to AGI. I think the bigger question is what that timeline looks like and does it happen in our lifetimes? Um, I think, again, speaking to some of those constraints, I think we talked about like the energy, money, whether the investments dry up, but there's other questions about just kind of the diminishing returns of, I mean, the system that we're currently optimizing is really just built on next token prediction. And so there's the question of, do we at some point hit diminishing returns on just scaling up that process of next token prediction? Does it really get to something that is rational and capable to the point and beyond what humans are capable of? But that being said, it has consistently surprised us as far as what it's capable of doing. We were just talking about that in the news segment. So with the V01 model.
Anything's as far as I'm concerned, we're in uncharted, unprecedented territory, and I've heard this said many times, and I'll probably say it a bunch more. But I am really getting tired of living through monumental events.
Yeah.
I would really like just a plateau for give us a couple of months. Let us catch our breath. But no, man. You know, I fear that it would never get to that point. And yeah, you can call me the pessimist, but once these devices become viable to the point where they can be mass produced at cost, this is when I think the uprising, that we see in all of those science fiction movies, it would happen. I mean, and I'm not trying to say that
By that, are
violence.
you saying like human uprising against the machines, or
Yep.
yeah?
Because let's be honest. I mean, I remember when the assembly lines back in Detroit, where I grew up, started getting more and more automated between the '80s and 2000. And it was the animosity, the anger, the aggression that these machines were taking away just some of the line workers' jobs. I couldn't imagine going, yeah, not only are we taking some of your jobs, we're taking all of your jobs, and not just your jobs, their jobs, their jobs, their jobs, and their jobs too. You know, so I see it more of to your polarization comment. I see polarization to the point of darn near mutiny.
I think
You
you're
know,
right. I mean, we were already seeing the early signs of that. Remember, it wasn't more than a couple months ago that we talked about that Waymo that was set on fire that you so
yeah,
eloquently referred to as a barbecue.
yes, so I mean, people and generationally, that's another thing. I think that as those of us in the, I'm going to say, prime of our life right now.
You keep telling yourself that, buddy.
Yeah, yeah, says the guy with the artificial knee. I know, but you know, the younger generations, they're growing up with this. And that's something that I think is also different, because I can see definite generational differences in terms of what is technologically acceptable. The ideas around personally identifiable information, privacy, censorship. It's different. It's just different. And I often wonder what it would be like for somebody like me or you, who we've dedicated most of our lives to these types of technologies, and understanding them. What would it have been like if we didn't grow up before they got here, and we eased into it, and we were basically just dropped in the deep end.
Yeah, you accept the world you're born into. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because you, as a parent, it is we know that every generation kind of looks at the generation after them and thinks those young whippersnappers and things are,
Oh yeah.
but it's things are so drastically different between generations now, so much more than it ever was before. Just the way that you live, the way that you interact with the world around you. I mean, just 10 years difference now, and the way that they grew up compared
Mhm.
to the way that the generation before them grew up is I just feel like that divide in terms of understanding really what our children are going through. It's hard to even. I mean, I have conversations with my son
Hmm.
about what's going on in school and just the technology, the phones in school, just the way that that transforms the way that the entire social experience takes place is hard for me to even kind of really sympathize with because we just didn't experience it.
And back to our topic for the main segment here. Maybe that's what the currency is in the future. Maybe it's likes.
Oh man, that is not what I want to hear. I
Well, I mean, if you take away everything else, I mean, what else is left?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there was a what is it? What was that show? Black Mirror episode that was exactly it. That was what we worked towards in the future was just those
Well,
blips of dopamine hits that we get from somebody else acknowledging us that we exist.
well, just remember, all since we are talking about post AGI economics, just remember to get your Swifty coins now because they will probably be worth more later.
Jump on the Swifty bandwagon. Yep.
I swear to God.
As I mentioned previously, yeah, I fear. I think there's a lot of stupid things that have come out of technology. We talked about the NFTs before jumping into this conversation,
Mhm.
and how dumb that whole trend was. And if we enter a whole new era of celeb coins, that on top of
Well, I mean that makes sense.
it
You
does.
know, because the US dollar, there's no more dollars. So all you can do is basically invest in your alternate currencies of whatever your famous celebrity is, and they will become the next. I'd like Swifty security.
No. You know what's interesting is so you mentioned investing, and I do think that that is a topic that is worth acknowledging as we speak about kind of our main topic here. Is I do think that wherever we hit that transition point, and I'm not saying it's in the next couple years, I'm not saying it's in the next decade, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But whenever we hit that transition point, I do think that it is going to solidify generational wealth for those that have been able to establish it, those that have been able to invest in the companies that are going to benefit from these. Whereas people that were still at that point of transition, the people that were still living paycheck to paycheck, at least until the point in which we can figure out that really hard transition period of what a post AGI economic system looks like, those are the people that's going to suffer the worst or the most. And I think that that's unfortunate. We're just going to see this one more thing, and there's already been so many factors that kind of continue to exacerbate that rich and poor gap and continue to make it harder and harder for the people that have already struggled. But I think that this is going to be another one of those things where those people that were able to invest prior to AGI will benefit from it, whereas those that weren't will not.
Yeah, but we're back to that same question again of if the dollar isn't worth the money that it's printed on, what is the investments worth? They're paying out in the same thing unless you can get them in some type of cryptocurrency that's going to be able to survive that kind of a crash. At that point you're almost back on the gold standard where it's going to be precious metals, and jewels.
All roads lead back to Swifty coin.
All roads lead back to Swifty coin.
I think on that note we'll wrap it up, right? All right. Well, this has been an excellent conversation. Always fascinating. And so until next time, right?
You got it.
Over and out.
Peace.
This has been another episode of the Cyber Cognition Podcast. If you enjoyed this show, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And check out other shows on the Cyber Circus Network for the best in cyber entertainment and the greatest show on Earth.